Ghost Spider is going to be the June Season Pass card in Marvel Snap. Is it worth picking up, or is this an easy one to pass on? Well, it depends on what kind of decks you like to play. For the most part, Ghost Spider is going to help move decks. There's a few scenarios where this could maybe extend beyond move archetypes, but for the most part, I think if you like move, you can pick this card up. If you don't, you can pass on it. So what does Ghost Spider do? So Ghost Spider here is a 2/3 on reveal. The last card you played moves here. Now, there was a bit of a discrepancy in the data mines, like people weren't too sure how it works, but let's get to the mechanics of this card to break it down. All right, so this is how it works. To really simplify it, if I play Human Torch on turn 1 on the left location, and then I play Ghost Spider on the right location on turn 2, she's going to pull Human Torch over, double his power, expend her ability, okay? So that is essentially what it does. It's the last card that you played. It doesn't matter when you play that last card. You could play it on turn 1, play nothing the rest of the game, and then on turn 6 play Ghost Spider, and you will still pull over that turn 1 play. I don't recommend doing that, but you could do it if you wanted. You can hold on that pull if you need to, which is actually, something to keep awareness of, okay? So another thing about this is if the location is full, Ghost Spider's not going to do anything, right? Because there needs to be an available spot to pull a card over. That also goes for if the last card that you played is at her location. She got nothing to move. The last card was already there. It's done. And that's pretty much it with this card. It's a pretty basic staple move card. I think it's going to work great in the archetype. So I think that's a huge pro for this because move has been needing more synergy cards. But the thing about this is not breaking any waves. It's not, like setting up a new win condition that move decks can take advantage of. Instead, it's kind of just slotting into existing move archetypes and just becoming another piece, another tool to use to pull things around. You're not getting crazy buffs or anything like that. So it's not the craziest card in the world, but I think it's great for move in general. Another thing is that the condition is just so easy to meet. There's no work that you have to put into this card, right? It's just an honor reveal. You pull the last card that you had. It's not even a setup for the next turn like Cloak kind of is, right? You don't have to think about that. You just kind of think about what was the last card that I played. And another thing is the variants, dude. The variant set is unreal. This season pass one looks pretty awesome, but I am in love with the Peach Momoko. We got Art Germ, we got Venomized. There are so many fire variants for this card, like especially this one. This is my number one. I love this variant so much. So for that alone, just to buff up your shop and make it look gorgeous, that's pretty good value right there in this card. Another thing is that if you don't like move decks, it's an easy pass. You're probably gonna hear me say this quite a few times. That's probably the question you're wondering. And if you just don't play move very often, if you don't find it very strong, which a lot of people don't, then you can just pass on this one. A lot of the season pass value comes in the new card. That's what I like to focus on because sure, there's cosmetics and there's some in-game currencies that can help you acquire new cards, but it's kind of minimal compared to even the free track. So I think for the most part, it's about the card because after the June season, this card's going to drop into Series 5 and it's going to be really difficult to acquire or not acquire until like 3 months until it drops until Series 3. So if you want this card, you want to add it to your move decks, I think it's worth picking up, but otherwise it's a pretty easy pass. Some of the cons, you have to plan ahead of time. You got to just know what was the last card you played so that's what you're pulling. If you top deck Ghost Spider and you want a player, you just have to think about the last card that you played. Risk filling a location early. So like if there's like Central Park and squirrels go out, then it just gets a bit dicey for moving those cards over and filling a location. Sadly, that's just an existing weakness with move decks, and kind of playing back to what I was saying is that this doesn't break any waves. It still has the same weaknesses that move decks have. It's not changing the game for them. So, like locations filling up, locations being restrictive and not allowing you to move things over, fixed tower destroying things. You got to watch out for all this stuff. It's going to hurt. But there's a few other counter cards that exist that might be worth putting in your deck after this drops because a lot of people are going to be picking it up and playing move decks. So let's get into those. All right, so some counters. So Cosmo pretty much just denies move in general because they have a lot lot of on reveals. So watch out for the dog, especially on your Ghost Spider. Another one is Kingpin. Yeah, there's a lot of conditions that need to be met. Why is your opponent even running Kingpin if this is their game plan to counter Ghost Spider? Because you got to play that on turn 6. You'd have to play Ghost Spider on turn 6 to pull something over to the location that has Kingpin there. So unless your opponent just surprised you with it, it's not the best counter, but hey, it could happen, so look out for it. But the bigger one is Galactus. I think Galactus kind of just hurts move in general because you want to have a big Heimdall turn 6 or move with a lot of things around. By the time Galactus is out, you're probably not able to move anything, and it doesn't even matter because there's only one location remaining. So Galactus can be a pretty big counter. And usually in move decks, you're not running Galactus counters. Like you're not running Cosmo usually. You're not running ways to give your opponent stuff. Maybe you're moving a few of their things around like Polaris, or you throw over a Goblin. That sometimes pops up in move decks. But for the most part, if you're just doing that buff style of moving your own things, you're not going to have ways to counter Galactus. And then playing on the filling the location problems, you got Green Goblins getting over here, debris thrown over rocks. Like I said, Central Park could be nasty. Viper, any of those junk decks that are going to put stuff on your side of the board is going to suck. So junk decks are going to hurt, I think, the move archetype if they get popular. And then another one is Professor X. If you lock up a location, it makes it really hard to move things around. If the card that you last played is at the X location, that's going to suck when you play your Ghost Spider. All right, and then some of the key synergies. So these are all pretty much staple move cards, right? You got your Human Torch doubling in power, Vulture getting +5, Dagger getting whatever power based on what your opponent has on their side of the board, Multiple Man getting a bunch of men out there, and then Miles Morales becoming a 1/5 if you moved a card the prior turn, right? So that works really well with Ghost Spider. These all work beautifully with Ghost Spider, and you can actually shove them all in the same deck. So in the middle there, I got multiple movers. This is a pretty standard move deck, but it is really effective. It does have multiple men. You could probably take that out. Sometimes that's a bit of a bait because you don't want to spend so many resources on buffing your multiple men and then moving it around, but it can be really fun. So you buff it up with Forge, Hulkbuster, that sort of thing. You're moving using Ghost Spider to either move your multiple men, Human Torch, Dagger, Vulture. There's a lot of options here for Ghost Spider to pull, which is fantastic. And it really is a nice cheap deck. There's only one 6-drop, right? And then there's no 5, and there's really no 4 because you want to play Miles Morales as a 1. So then you got Vulture and Hulkbuster, Doctor Strange. Those are your 3-drops. They're probably the most expensive. And then everything else is really, really cheap, easy to play, so that you can do that big turn 6 Heimdall. So I like that deck a lot. Pretty staple move deck. Then we got Jumping Spiders, probably my favorite. So this is a bounce aggro style of move deck. Okay, so what you want to do is if you can play Iron Fist and Human Torch, right? So you're going to knock him over and he's going to get +4, and then you bounce them back into your hand so that you can do it again. And then while you're doing that, you can also play Kitty Pryde, and it's all these cards that you can keep playing at the Angelo location without actually filling it and get her buffed up like crazy. Then you get all these cheap cards in your hand, maybe even discounted Viscera if you need to play it on 5, and then you play a whole whack of them to buff your Bishop, Hitmonkey, Angela. Amazing value. And how does Ghost Spider fit in here? Well, she can be the alternative to moving your Torch, right? Or I got Vulture in here as another option to move him around on that big turn 6. If you can manage to discount these as well and then move them on the final turn, that'll be for some crazy power totals. And then Cloak is just another nice option to move cards around. So I feel like this deck is going to work really well. I'm pretty excited about that list, and I'm probably going to try that first when Ghost Spider comes out. And then I have been hinting that this card could actually work outside of move decks, and I think it's in decks with really big power cards that bait your opponent into wanting to play Shang-Chi. And then what do? You Ghost Spider it over to a different location so that they totally whiff. It can be really valuable to move high power cards. We've seen it before where Heimdall actually gets worked in decks that don't even use any move synergies. But it's just a way of saying, hey, you're not going to expect this. You were doing all your calculations at these locations to beat whatever power I have, and all of a sudden it all shifts one way or the other and throws off your big turn 6 game plan. And this is what this kind of does. It's basically your staple Sauron. I could even put Zero in here as another option instead of maybe Ebony Maw, but basically what I'm trying to do is play things that have big amounts of power, maybe even use Shuri on them, and then I'm going to Ghost Spider on turn 6 along with Typhoid Mary, for instance. Anything. I don't know. It could get maybe a bit clunky. Maybe it's not even the best card in this list, but I would be interested to try it and see what works. Another, kind of power swap way to dodge Shang-Chi is using Arnim Zola on a card to duplicate it at 2 other places. And then the Taskmaster. This is a tried and true deck. It has been nerfed, Shuri nerf, and we haven't really seen it very often anymore, but I think it's still very relevant, very strong. So there you go. That is Ghost Spider in a nutshell. There's not too much to talk about with this card, but I think it's going to be a really interesting card, really fun card, because I do love move decks, so I'm pretty excited about it. And this season as a whole just looks absolute fire. The variants are through the roof. Let's go. So let me know in the comments below if you plan on picking up Ghost Spider, if this is a card for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you guys next time.